face a brand new chart for the head and for the heart. It's your journey, your tools.
Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision.
Right, like it's engineering or something.
Yeah, exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points to the screen and says, well, there it is. That's the problem.
It's a very comforting binary, you know? We like things to be visible, broken or not broken, sick or healthy.
But then you step into the world of neurodevelopment or trauma and chronic stress, and suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless.
Oh, yeah, entirely.
We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky. And honestly, nowhere is that water murkier or more dangerous than when we look at the state of men's health today.
That's the truth.
Because we are looking at a silence epidemic. I mean, let's just look at the numbers. Last year in Australia, 2,529 men died by suicide.
Yeah, which is an average of 7 men taking their own lives every single day.
7 men a day. And I want to frame those numbers for you, the listener, because well, sometimes thousands just wash over us as statistics, but men account for 75% of all suicides in the nation.
It is a staggering reality.
It really is. And the number of men dying by intentional self-harm is nearly double the national road toll.
Right.
Think about that for a second. We have massive national campaigns for road safety, speed cameras on every corner, breathalyzers, entire legislative bodies dedicated to bringing down the road toll, which sat at around 12,225 deaths.
We literally changed the structural engineering of our highways to save those lives.
Exactly. Yet the male suicide rate is quietly doubling that figure, and there are no speed cameras for this.
No.
There's just an overwhelming, pervasive silence. But I want to set the tone for this deep dive right up front. This is not a session about guilt. We are not here to shame anyone.
Absolutely not.
This is a radically honest, highly motivational exploration of human potential. Our mission today is to completely dismantle the tough guy fallacy. Not by calling it toxic, but by proving, with hard science, that it is biologically obsolete.
And we're drawing on a huge stack of clinical research today to do that.
Right.
We've got data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the 10 to Men longitudinal study, Dr. James Gross's process model of emotion regulation, plus fMRI studies by Lieberman and Torre, and somatic frameworks from Dr. Peter Levine.
It's a massive, massive lineup. And the promise here is that by the end of this deep dive, you will have actionable, science-backed tools to biologically discharge stress and reclaim your executive control.
You're going to be able to upgrade your nervous system.
Let's get into it. Okay, let's unpack this cultural mandate, because to understand why we need a biological upgrade, we first have to look at the devastating cost of the current operating system.
Yeah, the demographics really highlight that cost. It's a silence that impacts everyone, but it manifests with lethal specificity.
Tell me about that.
Well, if we look at youth, so young men aged 15 to 34, suicide accounts for an agonizing 34 to 38% of all deaths in that bracket.
Wow.
We are talking about a catastrophic loss of potential life. And then you look at the other extreme of the timeline. Men aged 85 and older experience the highest age-specific suicide rate of any demographic.
Really, the absolute high.
The highest, hitting up to 32.8 deaths per 100,000.
That older demographic statistic always it hits me the hardest.
Yeah.
It paints this picture of profound, agonizing end-of-life isolation.
It does.
Like a man who's lived 8 decades, raised a family, worked his entire life, and at the end of it all, he finds himself on an island with no tools to communicate his internal pain.
And we also have to look at communities where this crisis is compounded by historical factors. For Indigenous men, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men, the age-standardized suicide rate is 55.1 per 100,000.
55.1, that is.
It's more than 4 times higher than the rate for Indigenous women. It's a hemorrhage of community leaders, brothers, and fathers.
So the core mystery we are unpacking today is why. Why are men retreating into this lethal silence? I was looking at the 10 to Men data you brought in, and almost 25% of Australian men report they would absolutely not seek help from anyone for a mental health issue.
Not a friend, not a partner, not a doctor.
None of them. And 80% of adult men indicate they would be highly unlikely to utilize a phone helpline.
Which naturally results in extreme isolation. A national survey revealed that 43% of Australian men experience loneliness.
Almost half.
Nearly half the male population operating in a state of disconnection. with those aged 35 to 49 suffering the highest rates.
It feels like we've built a culture where men are driving cars with the check engine light flashing red. The engine is smoking, the temperature gauge is completely pinned, but they've been told that real drivers, strong drivers, just put black tape over the dashboard.
Just ignore it and keep driving.
Right. And if you pull over and ask for a mechanic, you're broken as a man. But I want to push back on this a bit. Is this avoidance really just about stubborn ego? Or is it a survival mechanism?
It's totally a survival mechanism. Calling it stubborn ego is incredibly reductive, and honestly, it blames the victim.
Yeah.
Qualitative research shows this avoidance is driven by a profound fear of social status loss. In evolutionary terms, humans are pack animals. For hundreds of thousands of years, if you showed weakness, you were ostracized.
And being ostracized meant death.
Exactly. You starved or were eaten. The nervous system doesn't differentiate between a saber-toothed tiger and the threat of losing the respect of your peers.
Wait, so the brain literally equates asking for help with physical death?
Yes. Young men consistently express this deep-seated terror that seeking help will lead to being outcast. They fear their partner will view them as weak or they'll lose standing at work.
They're just trying to protect their social survival.
But by doing so, they're ensuring their biological destruction. Refusing to communicate is effectively a biological death sentence for the 4% of men who have no close friends at all.
Which means we can't just tell guys to, speak up and expect it to work.
Yeah.
We are asking them to fight millions of years of evolutionary wiring.
Right. It's not that simple.
So let's look under the hood. What is physically happening inside the brain and body of a man who is actively hiding his pain?
To understand the physical cost, we look at the process model of emotion regulation developed by Dr. James Gross. When triggered, the brain has two primary strategies.
Okay.
The first is cognitive reappraisal. This is an early-stage intervention. It happens right at the beginning, before the physical symptoms really peak. It involves changing how you think about a situation to alter its impact.
Let's ground that. Say I'm at work and my boss sends a really short, sharp email criticizing my project.
Your immediate reaction is panic.
Yeah, like I'm going to get fired. So reappraisal would be catching that thought early.
Exactly, you reframe it. My boss is under a massive amount of pressure from the board. This email is terse because they are stressed, not because I am worthless.
And by doing that, you essentially tell your nervous system to stand down before it floods you with adrenaline.
You dial down the physiological response. It's highly efficient. But the second strategy is expressive suppression.
The tough guy move.
Right. This acts late in the sequence. You are already physiologically aroused, you're feeling the terror or the rage, but you make a conscious, effortful choice to inhibit your outward behavior.
So you force your face to stay neutral.
You steady your voice, you control your breathing, you hide it.
I think every guy listening knows exactly what that feels like. The sheer muscular effort of holding the mask in place. But what's fascinating here is what the lab findings actually show about this.
The paradox of suppression is wild. Researchers showed subjects film clips designed to elicit profound sadness or disgust. Half were told to react naturally.
And the other half?
The other half were told to behave so that an observer wouldn't have zero clue they were feeling anything. They had to suppress every micro-expression.
So what happened inside their bodies? Did it work?
The suppressors experienced absolutely no decrease in the negative emotion. None. They felt the agony just as intensely as the people crying openly.
Wow.
But by capping the outward expression, they tracked the energy. And worse, habitual suppression actually decreases the experience of positive emotions over time. It leaves them in a state of anhedonia.
Wait, really? So you don't actually feel less pain, you just lose your ability to feel joy?
You numb your capacity for happiness, but still absorb the full impact of the suffering. It's a spectacularly bad biological trait.
That is terrifying. But if the emotion is still raging inside, where does that physical energy go?
The energy is absorbed directly into the cardiovascular and sympathetic nervous systems. The effort to hide emotions acts as a massive secondary stressor.
Like it physically hurts you.
Men who suppress show severe hyperarousal, significant spikes in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, heightened electrodermal responding.
Meaning they're sweating.
Microsweating, yes. Their heart is hammering, blood vessels are violently constricting, all while they look perfectly calm.
Let me just paint a picture of this, because it's so common. Picture a guy pulling into his driveway after a humiliating day at work.
A classic scenario.
He sits in his car for 15 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, taking these rigid, shallow breaths, just trying to force his face to look normal before he walks in to see his kids.
He thinks he's protecting them.
Right. He thinks he's being the strong family man. But internally, his heart is sustaining physical trauma.
And studies show this toll compounds. When suppressors faced an unrelated stressor later on, their blood pressure responses were significantly higher than those who hadn't suppressed earlier.
So it creates a delayed debt.
A compounding physiological debt. Habitual expressive suppression is now definitively identified as a direct risk factor for severe cardiovascular disease.
But the damage isn't just to the heart, is it? What about cognitive function?
The cognitive drain is immense. The process of suppressing requires relentless engagement of the prefrontal cortex. You use so much processing power to hide your feelings that you severely impair memory formation.
So when you think you're keeping your cool in a stressful meeting, trying not to show you're angry, your brain is actually draining its battery so fast that you physically won't remember the details of what was said.
In objective tests, suppressors suffer much poorer memory recall.
You aren't being stoic. You're just handicapping your own intelligence. You're making yourself less capable of solving the problem.
And over the long term, this predicts worse psychological well-being years later.
Which brings us to the accumulation of all of this. Because that blood pressure spike in a meeting isn't a one-off event. What happens when suppression becomes a daily habit for decades?
That's where we look at allostatic load, a framework developed by Bruce McEwen.
Tell me about that.
Allostasis is the body's predictive regulation. When you face an acute stressor, the brain signals the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
The body's master alarm system.
Exactly. It floods the body with cortisol, adrenaline, inflammatory cytokines. Glucose spikes, so your muscles have instant fuel. Insulin sensitivity drops. Blood pressure increases.
And non-essential functions just shut down, right?
All of them. Because if you're running from a predator, you don't need to digest lunch.
Right.
And in nature, the system turns off once you survive. You return to baseline. But the societal demand for male suppression means the threat response is never deactivated.
The modern predator isn't a tiger. It's a mortgage. It's a silent tension in a marriage.
And you can't run away from a mortgage. So the stressor ends, but the chemicals keep pumping. This unresolved departure from baseline creates allostatic load.
The missing off switch. So what are the stages of this deterioration?
Stage 0 is a clean baseline. You get stressed, you recover. Stages 1 and 2 are allostatic load and overload. That's chronic sleep disruption, profound irritability, metabolic changes.
And stage 3?
Stage 3 is catastrophic illness, major depression, complex PTSD, severe cardiovascular events.
So what does this all mean for the everyday guy? We all know someone who seems fine, but then someone cuts him off in traffic, or he drops a coffee mug and he just explodes.
A massive outburst over nothing.
Right. Why does that happen?
Because of the window of tolerance. When a man is fundamentally overloaded, he is hovering at the absolute outer edge of his window of tolerance at all times.
He's deep in stage 2.
Yes. His system is so flooded with cortisol on a normal Tuesday that there is zero buffer left. The broken mug is just the single drop that overflows a cup that's been filling up for a decade.
And this chronic overload shows up physically in ways men rarely connect to their emotions, like sexual dysfunction.
This is crucial data. There's a sharp rise in sexual difficulties among Australian men, from 54.1% in 2013 to 64.7% in 2022.
Nearly 2/3 of the population. How does allostatic load cause that?
Sexual arousal requires a relaxed parasympathetic nervous system. It requires safety. If your body is locked in sympathetic overdrive, running from a tiger, it literally will not engage in reproductive processes.
But guys don't talk about it.
Because of the stoicism that caused the overload, they rarely seek help, which deepens the shame and adds to the allostatic load. It's a devastating loop.
Okay, I want to pause the science here and speak directly to you. If you are listening to this right now and you're feeling that heaviness, that chronic exhaustion, that short fuse, this means your burnout, your irritability, it is not a moral failing.
No, not at all.
It is a mathematical equation of accumulated stress chemicals. You've been asking your body to run a marathon while holding your breath. And just like we can accumulate these chemicals, we can biologically flush them out.
That is the most important message. The human brain has extraordinary neuroplasticity. It can reorganize and heal.
Yeah.
The damage of allostatic load is 100% reversible.
Let's talk about the biological antidote then, moving from the pathology of silence to the science of effect labeling. What is that?
Effect labeling is putting your internal feelings into concrete words. fMRI studies by Matthew Lieberman and Jared Torrey show that speaking up literally alters the physical architecture of your brain in real time.
What exactly are we seeing on the monitor when someone speaks their truth?
When triggered, your amygdala, the primitive threat center, fires rapidly. If you suppress, it keeps firing, bathing your brain in panic.
Right.
But the moment you attach a linguistic label, like "I am terrified of failing," massive clusters light up in the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, the RVLPFC.
The Advanced Language Center.
Exactly, and the RVLPFC sends a powerful inhibitory signal to the medial prefrontal cortex, the MPFC, which acts as a literal neurobiological brake on the amygdala.
So speaking an emotion violently dampens the fear center.
Yes. The researchers found an inverse correlation. RVLPFC goes up, amygdala goes down, MPFC goes up, amygdala goes down.
Why does finding the exact word have such a profound effect?
4 mechanisms. First, distraction. Finding the word draws processing power away from the panic.
You can't panic and search for adjectives at the same time.
Right. Second, self-reflection. Observing your state creates psychological distance. Third, reduction of uncertainty. Categorizing a nebulous dread gives it shape, calming the nervous system.
And the fourth?
Symbolic conversion. You shift a raw somatic survival threat into a structured cognitive data point.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. We have to redefine vulnerability. Emotions aren't mystical or weak, they are high-level telemetry. Refusing to label them is like flying a jet and putting duct tape over the radar.
That's a perfect analogy.
Speaking up is the ultimate executive action. You are taking the flight controls back.
You're transitioning from a passive victim of stress hormones to an intelligent architect of your resilience.
Okay, so we know why we need to speak up, but insight isn't enough. How do we physically get the lingering stress chemicals out? We need a framework to complete the stress cycle.
We do. And first, we must separate the stressor from the stress response.
Right, the external problem versus the internal chemicals.
Exactly. You can solve the external problem, pay the mortgage, appease the boss, but the internal chemicals remain.
The tiger is gone, but your body still thinks you're sprinting.
Yes. When triggered, the body enters one of the 4 Fs. Fight or flight are well known, but freeze looks like profound disconnection or brain fog, and fawn is people-pleasing, abandoning your own needs to avoid conflict.
How do we get out of those states? Animals naturally discharge survival energy. They shake, they run.
But humans trap it. To complete the cycle, we need tools. Physical movement, rhythmic exertion to burn off adrenaline. Deep social connection releases oxytocin, which antagonizes cortisol.
We heal in tribes.
Yes. Also creative self-expression, and crying or deep belly laughter, which physically convulse the diaphragm.
But what if the stress is deep trauma? We talked about somatic experiencing, or SE by Dr. Peter Levine. It's a bottom-up, body-based processing, right?
Yes. When overwhelmed, cognitive approaches can be too much. SE focuses on interoceptive sensations. There are 3 core concepts: resourcing, titration, and pendulation.
Let's break those down. What is resourcing?
Establishing an internal safe zone. 80 to 90% of safety detection comes from internal organs. Resourcing is deliberately attuning to a sensation of safety, like feeling your feet on the floor.
Okay, so you anchor yourself. What's titration?
Processing distress in tiny microdoses to avoid flooding the nervous system. You notice a small tension, process it, and return to your resource.
Which leads to pendulation.
Right, the biological rhythm of consciously oscillating between the trauma vortex and the healing vortex.
But how do you know you're pendulating and not just panicking?
Panic is involuntary. Pendulation is a conscious executive choice to touch the pain and retreat. You teach your brain it can experience stress and safely return to equilibrium.
You expand your window of tolerance. So once you're stabilized internally, how do you interact with the world? How do you communicate without triggering a fight?
We turn to Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication, or NVC. It's the ultimate architecture for clean, data-driven, emotional articulation.
There's a 4-part progression. Let's use an example. Your partner leaves dirty dishes everywhere.
Okay, step 1 is observation. Stating facts devoid of judgment. Not, you're a slog, but I noticed 4 dirty coffee cups on the table.
Right. Step 2 is feelings. Affect labeling in action. Not, I feel like you don't care, but I feel incredibly frustrated and overwhelmed.
Yes, lighting up the RVLPFC. Step 3 is needs. Connecting the feeling to a human requirement. Because I have a need for predictability.
You own the need. And step 4.
Requests. A positive, doable action step, not a demand. Would you be willing to put the dishes in the dishwasher tonight?
Think about how much energy this saves you. You aren't diagnosing the other person. You're just providing clean data about your own system.
It builds social networks, which buffers your allostatic load.
Exactly. So let's give you some micro habits for real-time mastery. Micro habit 1, the physiological sigh.
Rapid breathing collapses alveoli in the lungs, spiking CO2 and causing suffocation panic. The physiological sigh from Huberman, Feldman, and Krasno reverses this.
What's the protocol?
Deep nasal inhale, then a secondary short nasal inhale to pop the alveoli open, followed by a long, slow mouth exhale.
It offloads CO2 and uses the vagus nerve to slow the heart rate in under 30 seconds. And micro habit 2, the VU vocalization.
This stimulates the vagus nerve from the bottom up. Take a deep breath and exhale with a resonant woo from the deep belly. Let the vibration travel through the pelvic floor.
It acts as an internal acoustic massage, sending safety signals to the brainstem. And finally, structural support utilization. Dialing a helpline like Men's Line, 13 Yarn, or Beyond Blue.
That is the highest form of structural support, is the physical manifestation of affect labeling.
To wrap this all up, I want to deliver an affirmation for integration. My body's signals are highly intelligent blueprints for recovery. Acknowledging my pain is a biological necessity. Speaking my truth is the ultimate executive action.
Abandoning the Stoic ideal isn't about becoming fragile. It's about building a superior, highly integrated architecture of mind and body.
I'll leave you with this provocative thought. If vulnerability is scientifically proven to be the ultimate form of executive control, how would the dynamics of our most fiercely competitive spaces, our boardrooms, our sports fields, our families, transform if we began measuring a man's strength not by his silence, but by the speed and precision of his emotional literacy? You have the tools to rebuild your baseline, one breath at a time. Thanks for joining the Deep Dive.
Your journey, your tools. It's the strength to build anew. It's the light to guide you through. It's the choice to find your way. Starting here, starting today. Your journey, your tools.
Before we wrap up, I want to remind you of one undeniable fact. Your value is not determined by how much stress you can carry in silence. We are pack animals, and holding on to that pressure isn't a badge of honor. It is a biological burden you simply do not have to carry alone. Dropping the tough guy armor and voicing your struggle is not a weakness. It is the ultimate definition of courage and a vital step in regulating your nervous system. You have the immense power to rewrite this narrative, to step out of isolation, and to build a baseline that actually supports you. You've absolutely got this. Are you ready to transform your mindset and build systems that support your best self? The Your Journey. Your Tools app contains the exact blueprints, positive reinforcement, and diagnostic tools you need to thrive. Be kind to yourself. You are doing better than you think, and I'll catch you on your journey.